The Galactic Academy of Combat and Diplomacy hung suspended in space, a gleaming testament to interstellar cooperation. Its crystalline spires and bioorganic domes housed the finest warriors and negotiators from 1,000 worlds. Today, however, the Academy buzzed with an unusual excitement. For the first time in its centuries-long history, a human was joining its ranks. Zax Leary, a Volusian professor with iridescent scales and 4 arms, watched from her office as the transport ship docked. Her large, multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of both curiosity and apprehension. "I still can't believe the Council approved this," she muttered to her colleague, a gelatinous Blorbian named Gloop. Gloop burbled in agreement, its translucent body rippling with shades of blue and green. "The humans have only been part of the Galactic Confederation for 5 standard years. Isn't it a bit soon to be admitting one to the Academy?" Zax Leary's lower arms twitched in a shrug. Apparently, this one showed promise. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Though I can't imagine what kind of promise a species from a Deathworld could offer in terms of diplomacy." The transport's doors hissed open, and a solitary figure stepped out. Both Zax Leary and Gloop leaned closer to the window, their curiosity overcoming their reservations. The human was underwhelming. Standing at just under 2 meters tall, with only 2 arms and 2 legs, it looked positively fragile compared to the hulking Croxinar security guards flanking it. Its skin was a pale pink, with a mop of dark fur on top of its head. The human wore the standard Academy uniform, which seemed to hang awkwardly on its frame. "That's it," Gloop bubbled incredulously. "That's what all the fuss is about." Zax Leary remained silent, her eyes narrowing as she observed the human's gait. There was something different about the way it moved, a fluidity, a barely contained energy that seemed at odds with its unassuming appearance. "Don't be too quick to judge," she finally said. "Remember, their homeworld has gravity 1.3 times our standard. And the atmospheric pressure, well, let's just say most of us would be crushed if we ever set foot on Earth." Gloop shuddered, its entire body wobbling. "Remind me again why we let them join the Confederation." Before Zax Leary could answer, a commotion erupted in the docking bay. The human, apparently startled by a passing maintenance drone, had reacted with alarming speed. In a blur of motion, it had vaulted over a nearby railing, twisted in midair, and landed in a defensive crouch some 3 meters away. The Croxinar guards, caught off guard, fumbled with their stun buttons. By the time they had readied their weapons, the human was already standing, looking somewhat embarrassed. Sorry about that," they heard the human say through the intercom. Its voice was surprisingly melodious. "Reflex. Won't happen again." Zax Leary and Gloop exchanged glances. "Well," Zax Leary said slowly, "this should be an interesting semester." Sarah Chen, freshly arrived human exchange student and unwitting cause of all the excitement, was trying very hard not to freak out. The Academy was beyond anything she had imagined. Every corridor seemed to defy the laws of physics, with gravity shifting subtly as she walked. Alien species she had only read about in briefings strode, slithered, or floated past her, some giving her curious looks, others studiously ignoring her. "This way," Cadet Chen, her guide, a towering insectoid being, clicked in passable English. "Your dormitory is in the adaptive environment sector." Sarah nodded, trying to keep her cool. She was representing all of humanity here, no pressure or anything. As they walked, she couldn't help but notice the whispers and stares following her. She caught snatches of conversation in various languages, her neural translator struggling to keep up. "Deathworlder. But so small. Heard they eat actual animals." Sarah suppressed a sigh. She had expected this, of course. Humans were still a novelty in galactic society. Their homeworld, Earth, was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, a fact that both fascinated and terrified most other species. The fact that humans had not only survived but thrived in such an environment was a source of endless speculation. What most of them didn't realize was that Sarah was just as awed and intimidated by them as they were by her. Each alien she passed was a miracle of evolution, adapted to environments she could scarcely imagine. And here she was, a girl from Seattle who had once cried over a spider in her bathroom. They'd reached her dormitory, a spherical room that seemed to be gently pulsing. The insectoid guide waved a limb, and the wall arised open. "This will be your quarters, Cadet Chen. The environment will adjust to Earth standard gravity and atmosphere. You may personalize it as you wish." The being's mandibles clicked in what Sarah hoped was a friendly manner. "Your orientation begins in 2 hours. Do you have any questions?" Sarah had about 1,000,000 questions, but she settled for one. Yes. Where's the cafeteria? I'm starving." The guide's compound eyes seemed to twinkle with amusement. "Ah, yes, the famous human metabolism. The nutrient dispensary is 2 levels down. I recommend the protein cubes. They're mostly digestible for your species." With that reassuring advice, the guide left, leaving Sarah alone in her new room. She sat on the bed, which obligingly molded itself to her shape, and let out a long breath. "Okay, Sarah," she muttered to herself. "You've got this. You're just a normal girl on an alien space station, about to train with the galaxy's elite. No big deal." Her pep talk was interrupted by a soft chime. A holographic message appeared in the air before her. "We'll soon KDTCHEN. Your first ASATSSNENT will begin in 1 hour. Please report to Training Arena 7. Bring your courage." Sarah blinked at the message, then groaned. "Bring your courage? Seriously?" She flopped back on the bed, which rippled comfortingly beneath her. "I don't suppose there's any chance that's just a mistranslation for bring a snack, is there?" The room, unsurprisingly, did not answer. With another sigh, Sarah pushed herself up. First assessment in an hour, and she still hadn't found the cafeteria. At least she had her priorities straight. As she stepped out of her room, ready to brave the alien cafeteria and whatever mostly digestible horrors awaited her there, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was in for far more than she had bargained for. Little did she know, the galaxy was in for a few surprises of its own. Sarah Chen stood at the entrance of Training Arena 7, her stomach full of what she hoped were actually protein cubes and not some alien's idea of a practical joke. The arena was vast, easily the size of a football stadium, with various obstacle courses and training equipment scattered throughout. The ceiling seemed to shimmer, occasionally revealing glimpses of the star-filled space beyond. "Cadet Chen," a melodious voice called out. Sarah turned to see Professor Zaxleary approaching, her 4 arms moving in graceful synchronization. "I trust you've settled in." Sarah nodded, trying not to stare at the professor's iridescent scales. "Yes, thank you, Professor. I'm ready for the assessment." Zaxleary's multifaceted eyes blinked in what Sarah hoped was approval. "Excellent. Now, before we begin, I must warn you. This assessment might be more intense than what you're used to on Earth." Sarah straightened her back, determination setting in. "I can handle it, Professor. I didn't come all this way to back down from a challenge." A ripple passed through Zaxleary's scales, a Velusian expression of amusement. "Very well. Your assessment today is simple. You must reach the other side of the arena." Sarah blinked, waiting for more instructions. When none came, she asked, "That's it? Just walk across?" "Oh no, Cadet," Zaxleary said, her voice tinged with what sounded suspiciously like mischief. "You must reach the other side. Alive." Before Sarah could process this ominous statement, a loud buzzer sounded. The floor beneath her feet suddenly shifted, and she found herself on a small platform rising above a sea of, was that lava? "What the?" Sarah's exclamation was cut short as she noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. Robotic drones, each armed with what looked unsettlingly like actual weapons, were emerging from hidden panels in the walls. "Your assessment begins now, Cadet Chen. Zaxleary's voice echoed through the arena. Remember, in real combat, there are no rules. Only survival. Sarah had about 2 seconds to think. This is insane. Before the first drone opened fire, she dove to the side, rolling across the platform as energy bolts sizzled through the air where she had been standing. Years of parkour training kicked in as Sarah assessed her surroundings. The platforms were arranged in an irregular pattern, some stationary, others moving up and down or side to side. Between them, the lava bubbled ominously. "Okay, Sarah," she muttered to herself, ducking as another volley of energy bolts flew overhead. "You've done crazier things than this. Remember that time you tried your mom's experimental fusion cuisine?" With that not entirely reassuring thought, Sarah took a deep breath and leaped. She soared through the air, her body twisting to avoid another barrage from the drones. She landed on the next platform in a roll, coming up ready to move again. From an observation deck high above the arena, a group of alien professors watched in fascination. "Remarkable," Professor Gloop burbled, its gelatinous form rippling with excitement. "Look at that agility, and in our gravity, no less." Zaxleary nodded, her eyes never leaving the human's form as it bounded from platform to platform. "Indeed. But let's see how she handles the next phase." As if on cue, sections of the arena's walls began to move, revealing a series of massive tentacles that whipped out towards Sarah. Down in the arena, Sarah was beginning to feel a glimmer of hope. She was making good progress, her earthborn muscles propelling her further and faster than she had thought possible in alien gravity. Then she saw the tentacles. "Oh, come on," she yelled, diving into a forward roll as a tentacle slammed into the platform behind her. "This is not what I signed up for." But even as she complained, a part of Sarah's mind was already analyzing the new threat. The tentacles, while fast, had a predictable pattern to their movements. If she timed it right. Sarah waited until the nearest tentacle was fully extended, then ran straight towards it. At the last second, she leaped, using the retracting tentacle as a springboard to launch herself towards a platform that had seemed impossibly far away. For a heart-stopping moment, she flew through the air, the lava bubbling hungrily below her. Then her hands caught the edge of the platform, and with a grunt of effort, she pulled herself up. "Ha!" she shouted, allowing herself a brief moment of triumph. "Is that all you've got?" The arena, as if accepting her challenge, rumbled ominously. The far wall began to slide open, revealing something big. In the observation deck, even the alien professors leaned forward in anticipation. "Professor Zaxleary," Gloop bubbled nervously, "are you sure this is wise? The Krax BattleBot is designed for advanced students. It might be too much for a novice, especially a human." Zaxleary's scales rippled with an emotion that didn't translate well to human understanding. It was somewhere between academic curiosity and the excitement of a scientist about to test a particularly volatile experiment. "That, my dear colleague," she said, her eyes fixed on the human who stood alone against the emerging threat, "is precisely what we're here to find out." Back in the arena, Sarah stared at the monstrosity emerging from the wall. It was easily 4 times her height, a nightmarish fusion of metal and what looked disturbingly like organic components. Multiple limbs, each ending in a different weapon, extended from its central body. Its head, if you could call it that, was a cluster of sensors, and what Sarah really hoped weren't actual eyes. As the BattleBot fully emerged, its sensors focused on Sarah. A sound that might have been a roar, if machines could roar, echoed through the arena. Sarah, facing a creature that looked like it had stepped out of her worst sci-fi nightmares, did the only thing she could think of. She laughed. It wasn't a laugh of joy, or even of hysteria. It was the laugh of someone who had looked at an impossible situation and decided, well, why the hell not? "Okay, big guy," Sarah said, dropping into a ready stance as the BattleBot lumbered towards her. "Let's dance." As she prepared to face this final, seemingly insurmountable challenge, Sarah felt something she hadn't expected. Underneath the fear and the adrenaline, there was a spark of pure exhilaration. This, she realized, was why she had come to the academy. Not just to learn, but to test herself against the unknown, to push beyond what she thought was possible. The BattleBot charge, its multiple weapon systems powering up with an ominous hum. Sarah, a grin spreading across her face despite the danger, tensed her muscles and prepared to move. In the observation deck, the alien professors watched in stunned silence as the human and the BattleBot collided in a spectacular display of agility versus raw power. None of them, not even Zaxleary, could have predicted what happened next. The assessment, it seemed, was about to take an unexpected turn. The Karax BattleBot's first attack came swiftly, a massive metallic arm swinging towards Sarah with enough force to pulverize concrete. To the astonishment of the watching professors, Sarah didn't try to dodge. Instead, she ran straight towards the oncoming limb. At the last possible second, Sarah dropped into a baseball slide, the BattleBot's arm whooshing harmlessly over her head. She slid between its legs, popping up behind the mechanical monstrosity before it could react. "Too slow, big guy," Sarah taunted, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "Didn't they teach you to watch your back?" The BattleBot whirled around, its sensors recalibrating to track its unexpectedly agile opponent. Sarah was already on the move, leaping from platform to platform, always staying just out of reach. In the observation deck, the alien professors were in an uproar. "Impossible," exclaimed Professor Exik, a Koolian with tentacles for hair. "No first-year cadet has ever lasted this long against the Karax." Gloop wobbled excitedly. "Look at her movements. It's as if she's anticipating the BattleBot's attacks before they happen." Zaxleary remained silent, her multifaceted eyes narrowed in concentration. There was something about the human strategy that nagged at her. It was almost as if, down in the arena, Sarah was beginning to feel the strain. The BattleBot was relentless, its attacks coming faster and harder with each passing moment. She knew she couldn't keep dodging forever. She needed a plan. As she vaulted over a sweeping mechanical limb, Sarah's eyes caught something. A small panel on the BattleBot's back, slightly ajar. In the split second she had to observe it, she saw a glimpse of circuitry within. "Bingo," Sarah muttered, a plan forming in her mind. But how to reach it? The answer came in the form of one of the arena's obstacles, a series of swinging pendulums designed to knock contestants off the platforms. Sarah had been avoiding them so far, but now, "Hey, Rust Bucket," she yelled, waving her arms. "Bet you can't hit me up here." The BattleBot's sensors locked onto her, and it charged forward, all its weapon systems powering up for a devastating attack. Sarah stood her ground, timing her move carefully. Just as the BattleBot reached her, just as its weapons were about to fire, Sarah leaped. She soared over the machine, grabbing onto one of the swinging pendulums at the apex of its arc. The BattleBot, unable to stop its momentum, crashed into the wall of the arena. As it staggered back, disoriented, Sarah swung on the pendulum, building up speed. "Please work, please work, please work," she chanted under her breath. At the height of her swing, she let go, flying through the air directly towards the BattleBot's exposed back panel. Time seemed to slow down. Sarah could see every detail. The surprised expressions of the alien professors in the observation deck, the glowing eyes of the BattleBot as it began to turn, the tiny gap in its armor that was her one chance at victory. Her hands found the edge of the panel, and with a strength born of desperation, she tore it open. Inside was a chaos of alien circuitry, glowing and pulsing with energy. Sarah had about half a second to make a decision. Her eyes landed on a large pulsing crystal that seemed to be at the center of the circuitry. Without thinking, she grabbed it and pulled. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like 1,000 tuning forks being struck at once, the crystal came free. The BattleBot froze, its limbs locking up in mid-motion. Sarah, still clinging to the machine's back, held her breath. Slowly, ever so slowly, the battlebot began to tilt backward. Oh, Sarah's expletive was cut short as she and the now inactive battlebot crashed to the arena floor. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, from beneath the fallen machine, came a muffled voice. Does this mean I pass? The observation deck exploded into chaos. Professors were shouting, gesticulating wildly with various appendages, some demanding explanations, others calling for immediate accolades. Zaxlery silenced them all with a sharp whistle. Enough. Professor Gloop, please assist Cadet Chen. The rest of you, meet me in the conference room in 10 minutes. We have much to discuss. As Gloop oozed its way down to the arena floor to help extract Sarah from beneath the inactive battlebot, Zaxlery allowed herself a small smile. The human had not just survived the assessment. She had excelled in a way none of them had anticipated. Well played, Cadet Chen, Zaxlery murmured to herself. Well played indeed. An hour later, Sarah sat in Professor Zaxlery's office. An ice pack, or what passed for an ice pack in alien technology, pressed to her head. Despite the bruises and the lingering smell of ozone, she couldn't keep a grin off her face. So, she said, trying to keep her voice casual, how did I do? Zaxlery regarded her with an unreadable expression. Cadet Chen, in all my years at this academy, I have never seen a performance quite like yours. Sarah's grin faltered. Is that a good thing? That, Zaxlery said, is what we've been debating for the past hour. She leaned forward, her scales shimmering with an intensity that made Sarah blink. Tell me, how did you know to remove the Carax crystal? That's not information available to first-year cadets, or even most advanced students. Sarah blinked, confusion evident on her face. The what crystal? I just saw a glowy thing that looked important, and figured, hey, if I pull that out, maybe it'll stop trying to kill me. There was a long pause as Zaxlery processed this. Then, to Sarah's utter astonishment, the alien professor burst out laughing. It was a strange sound, like wind chimes in a hurricane, but unmistakably mirthful. Cadet Chen, Zaxlery said when she had composed herself, I believe you're going to make the next few years very interesting indeed. As Sarah left the office, still slightly dazed from the day's events, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had passed more than just an assessment. Somehow, without realizing it, she had started to change the Academy's perception of humans. And this, she realized with a mix of excitement and trepidation, was just the beginning. Little did Sarah know, news of her unconventional victory was already spreading through the Academy and beyond. In the days to come, it would reach ears both friendly and hostile, setting in motion events that would challenge not just Sarah, but the entire galactic status quo. The Deathworlder had made her mark, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the weeks following Sarah Chen's unconventional triumph over the Carax battlebot, the Galactic Academy of Combat and Diplomacy buzzed with a new energy. Whispers of the human anomaly echoed through crystalline corridors and bioorganic lecture halls. Some spoke of Sarah with awe, others with skepticism, and a few with poorly concealed resentment. For Sarah herself, life had become a whirlwind of intense training sessions, mind-bending lectures on alien cultures, and the constant challenge of navigating a world where she was the only human for light years. Faster, Cadet Chen. Professor Zaxlery's voice rang out across the anti-gravity chamber. Your enemies won't wait for you to find your balance. Sarah gritted her teeth, pushing off from one floating platform to another. The chamber's gravity shifted unpredictably, making each movement a calculated risk. Sweat beaded on her forehead, defying the artificial gravity to drip upwards. With all due respect, Professor, Sarah gasped between leaps. I don't think my enemies will be throwing me around in zero-G while reciting Arcturian poetry. A ripple of amusement passed through Zaxlery's scales. You'd be surprised, Cadet. The Arcturians consider poetry the highest form of combat. Now recite the Treaty of Rigel while dodging these plasma bolts. as Sarah twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding the harmless, but painfully hot plasma bolts while struggling to remember the 57 clauses of the Rigel Treaty. She couldn't help but grin. This was exactly the kind of insane challenge she had hoped for when she signed up for the Academy. Meanwhile, in a secluded corner of the Academy's vast library, a group of senior cadets huddled around a holographic display. "It's not right," hissed Kralvor, a Saurian cadet with emerald scales and a perpetual scowl. "This human has barely been here a month, and already they're talking about fast-tracking her to advanced combat classes." Luminara, a bioluminescent quasar being, pulsed with concern. "But you've seen the vids, Kralvor. Her performance in the assessments has been unprecedented." "Luck," Kralvor spat. "Nothing but luck and primitive instincts. She's making a mockery of our traditions, of everything this academy stands for." The third member of their group, a silicon-based life form named Cyanine, emitted a series of clicks that their translators rendered as, "Perhaps we should test this human ourselves. The annual Galactic Combat Tournament is approaching. If she's as good as they say, let her prove it there." A slow, predatory grin spread across Kralvor's reptilian features. "Yes, and I know just how to ensure she gets a proper challenge." As the group began to plot, they were unaware of the shadowy figure lurking behind a nearby data crystal. Professor Gloop, who had come to the library for some quiet study time, found his gelatinous form quivering with concern. This, he realized, could lead to trouble. Sarah sprawled on her bed, every muscle aching from the day's training. She was just about to drift off to sleep when her room's communication panel chimed. "Cadet Chen," came Professor Zaxleary's voice. "Please report to the Grand Hall immediately." Groaning, Sarah dragged herself up. "So much for a good night's sleep," she muttered, pulling on her uniform. When she arrived at the Grand Hall, Sarah found it packed with cadets and faculty from every corner of the galaxy. At the center of the hall stood Arch-Chancellor Zahn, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate exosuit. "Cadet Sarah Chen," the Arch-Chancellor's voice boomed. "Step forward." As Sarah approached, she could feel the weight of 1,000 alien gazes upon her. She straightened her back, trying to project a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "It has come to our attention," Zahn continued, "that your performance at this academy has been exceptional. As such, we have decided to offer you a unique opportunity." Sarah's heart raced. Was this it? Was she about to be kicked out for being too disruptive? "The annual Galactic Combat Tournament is fast approaching," Zahn said. "Traditionally, only senior cadets are allowed to compete. However, we are prepared to make an exception in your case." A murmur ran through the crowd. Sarah blinked, stunned. I'm honored, Arch-Chancellor. But are you sure? I mean, I've only been here a month." Zahn's energy form pulsed with what might have been amusement. "My dear, in that month you have broken more academy records than any cadet in the past century. We believe you are ready for this challenge. Do you accept?" Sarah's mind raced. This was insane. She was nowhere near ready to compete against senior cadets with years of training. It could be humiliating, even dangerous. The smart thing would be to politely decline, to say she needed more time to prepare. But then, Sarah Chen hadn't come to an alien combat academy to do the smart thing. A grin spread across her face. "When do we start?" The Grand Hall erupted in a cacophony of alien cheers, whispers, and in some cases, ominous growls. As Sarah was swarmed by well-wishers and curious onlookers, she caught sight of Professor Zaxleary standing off to the side. The Volusian gave her a nod that was part pride, part warning. In that moment, Sarah realized that the real challenge was just beginning. The assessment had been one thing, but this was a whole new level. She was about to represent not just herself, but all of humanity on a galactic stage. As the excitement of the announcement washed over her, Sarah felt a familiar mix of terror and exhilaration. Whatever came next, she knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was in for one hell of a show. Little did she know, hidden agendas and ancient secrets were about to turn this tournament into something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The stage was set, the players were moving into position, and Sarah Chen, the unlikely human champion, was about to find herself at the center of a cosmic storm. The Galactic Combat Tournament loomed on the horizon, promising glory, danger, and revelations that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Order. For Sarah, for the Academy, and for the entire Galactic Confederation, nothing would ever be the same again. The day of the Galactic Combat Tournament arrived in a blaze of alien sunlight and palpable tension. The Academy's massive arena, usually reserved for training, had been transformed into a spectacular battleground. Holographic barriers shimmered, ready to contain the most destructive combat techniques. Stands filled with a rainbow of alien spectators buzzed with excitement and speculation. Sarah Chen stood in the preparation chamber, trying to calm her racing heart. The past week had been a blur of intensive training, strategy sessions with Professor Zax Leary, and more than a few moments of doubt. "You've got this, Sarah," she muttered to herself, adjusting her combat suit. The outfit, a marvel of alien technology, adapted to her movements like a second skin. Just treat it like another crazy training session, with, the entire galaxy watching. A chime sounded, signaling that it was time. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped out into the arena. The roar of the crowd hit her like a physical force. Thousands of alien beings, from tiny silicon-based life forms to massive gas giants contained in robotic shells, all focused their attention on her. On the far side of the arena, she could see her first opponent emerging, a hulking Cronin warrior, his rocky skin gleaming under the arena lights. Let the first match of the Galactic Combat Tournament begin. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Cadet Sarah Chen of Earth versus Cadet Gronks of Krona Prime. As the holographic barrier sprang up around them, Sarah settled into a ready stance. Gronks, nearly 3 times her size, grinned, or at least Sarah assumed the grinding of his stone teeth was meant to be a grin. "I will crush you, tiny earth creature," Gronks rumbled, his voice like gravel in a blender. Sarah smirked, pushing down her fear. Big words from a walking gravel pit. "Let's dance, Rocky." Gronks roared and charged, his massive fists swinging down in an earth-shattering blow. But Sarah was already moving, her human agility allowing her to dodge at the last second. As Gronks's fist hit the ground, leaving a sizable crater, Sarah was already behind him, delivering a series of quick strikes to the joints of his stone body. The crowd gasped as Gronk stumbled, clearly caught off guard by the human speed. But Sarah knew she couldn't win on agility alone. She needed a plan. As the fight continued, Sarah's mind raced, recalling every lesson, every tidbit of alien biology she crammed over the past month. Then it hit her. Cronins, for all their strength, had a critical weakness. Dodging another bone-crushing blow, Sarah sprinted towards the arena wall. Gronks followed, his heavy footsteps shaking the ground. Just as he was about to reach her, Sarah leaped, pushing off the wall and vaulting over the Cronin's head. In midair, she twisted, grabbing onto Gronks's rocky shoulders. Before he could react, she pressed her palms flat against his back and activated her suit's hidden feature, a localized sonic emitter. The effect was immediate. Gronks's crystalline body structure began to vibrate, cracks appearing across his surface. With a sound like a mountain collapsing, the mighty Cronin crumbled to the ground, defeated. The arena fell silent for a moment, then erupted in cheers. Sarah stood, panting but victorious, as the announcer declared her the winner of the first round. As she left the arena, Sarah caught sight of Kralvor, the Saurian cadet, watching her with narrowed eyes. Something about his gaze sent a shiver down her spine. The tournament continued, each round more challenging than the last. Sarah faced opponents with abilities that defied her understanding of physics. Beings that could manipulate gravity, phase through solid matter, even alter the flow of time itself. Yet, with each battle, Sarah found herself adapting, thinking on her feet, combining her human instincts with her newfound knowledge of alien weaknesses. She wasn't always the strongest or the fastest, but her unpredictability and resourcefulness kept her in the game. As she progressed through the ranks, Sarah began to notice something odd. The challenges seemed to be getting more than just physically demanding. They were becoming increasingly tailored to exploit her specific weaknesses. It was as if someone was feeding inside information to her opponents. Before the final round, as Sarah caught her breath in the preparation chamber, Professor Zaxleary burst in, her scales flickering with agitation. "Cadet Chen," she said urgently, "we have a problem. We've uncovered evidence of sabotage. Someone has been manipulating the tournament, trying to ensure your defeat." Sarah's eyes widened. "What? Who would do that?" Zaxleary's expression was grim. "We're not sure, but we suspect it goes beyond mere academic rivalry. There are factions in the Galactic Confederation who fear what your success might mean for the balance of power." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "So what do we do?" "We don't have time to postpone the final match," Zaxleary said. "You'll have to go out there. But be careful, Cadet. I fear your final opponent may be more dangerous than we anticipated." As if on cue, the chime sounded, calling Sarah to the arena for the final match. With a nod to Zaxleary, she stepped out, her mind racing with this new information. The arena had been transformed for the final battle. The ground was riddled with obstacles, holographic hazards flickered in and out of existence, and at the center stood her final opponent, Kralvor. The Saurian cadet's eyes gleamed with malice as Sarah approached. So, the human made it to the final round. How? Unexpected. Sarah settled into a fighting stance, her senses on high alert. "Didn't think I'd make it this far. Huh. Sorry to disappoint." Kralvor's scales rippled, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "Oh, you haven't disappointed at all. In fact, you've performed exactly as we hoped." Before Sarah could process his words, Kralvor pressed a hidden button on his combat suit. The arena around them flickered, the holographic barriers faltering. "What the—" Sarah began, but her words were cut short as Kralvor launched into an attack. The fight that ensued was like nothing Sarah had experienced before. Kralvor moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible, his attacks charged with an energy that left scorch marks on the arena floor. As Sarah defended herself, narrowly avoiding lethal blows, she realized the terrible truth. Kralvor wasn't fighting like a cadet. He was fighting like a trained assassin. The crowd's cheers had turned to gasps of shock and concern. In the stands, professors and officials argued frantically, trying to shut down the compromised arena systems. Sarah was on the defensive, her mind racing to find a solution. This wasn't just a tournament anymore. It was a fight for survival. As she ducked under another of Kralvor's energy-charged swipes, Sarah's eyes landed on the flickering holographic hazards. An idea began to form, a crazy, possibly suicidal idea. "Hey, lizard breath," she taunted, backing towards one of the larger holographic obstacles. "Is this really the best the galaxy has to offer? I've had tougher fights with my alarm clock." Kralvor snarled, his composed facade cracking. He charged at Sarah, his claws extended for a killing blow. At the last possible second, Sarah dropped to the ground. Kralvor, unable to stop his momentum, plunged straight into the holographic hazard. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as the faulty systems tried to process the collision, there was a blinding flash of light. When the glow faded, Kralvor lay unconscious on the arena floor, his systems overloaded by the holographic feedback. The arena erupted into chaos. Security drones swarmed in, officials rushed to contain the situation, and above it all, the announcer's confused voice declared Sarah Chen the winner of the Galactic Combat Tournament. In the days that followed, the truth came out. Kralvor had been part of a fringe group that feared the integration of Deathworlders, like humans, into galactic society. They had planned to use the tournament to eliminate Sarah and discourage future human participation in galactic affairs. Instead, their plan had backfired spectacularly. Sarah's victory, and the revelation of the plot against her, had turned her into a galactic sensation. Overnight, she had become a symbol of human potential and resilience. As Sarah stood on the podium, accepting the tournament trophy from a clearly flustered Arch-Chancellor Zahn, she caught Professor Zax Leary's eye in the crowd. The Volusian gave her a subtle nod, her scales shimmering with pride. Sarah grinned, lifting the trophy high. She had come to the Academy to test her limits, to see how humanity measured up against the wonders of the galaxy. Instead, she had shown the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As the crowd cheered and alien reporters clamored for interviews, Sarah Chen, the unlikely champion from a little blue planet called Earth, realized that her adventure was just beginning. The galaxy had thrown its best at her, and she had emerged victorious. Whatever came next, whether it was diplomatic missions to far-flung worlds or uncovering more galactic conspiracies, Sarah knew one thing for certain: the Deathworlder from Earth was here to stay, and the galaxy would never be the same again.